At Despair Incorporated, we like to say that we are the brand for cynics, pessimists, and the chronically unsuccessful. And the question is, why would anybody identify their market this way? Very simply, it's because we believe that for every winner, there are dozens of losers. And the odds are that you're one of them. Okay? But that's all right, because I'm a loser too. And that's why I founded Despair Incorporated. So let me tell you very briefly how all this got started. I was starting a promising career in academia in New York City, and I was offered the opportunity to join an internet startup in Dallas, Texas. A wealthy friend of mine was a significant investor in the company, and he convinced me that this would be a great opportunity, so I took it. And as is often the case in these kinds of ventures, the compensation was a combination of low pay and significant number of stock options. I got the low pay, but the stock option thing didn't work out so well. And it's a bit of a complicated story, but just suffice it to say, the president of the company had overpromised the number of options available, so he didn't have them to give out. But the bigger problem was, as a result of just administrative delay, by the time he rolled out the plan, they were priced at over 12 times higher than they should have been. As a result, he essentially eliminated almost all of the upside that we had been working for. So the day I got my option agreement, my dream job had become a nightmare. So I went into the office of a couple friends of mine who had been working for the company about twice as long as I had to see if they got the same raw deal. They had, as had everybody else who put any hope in their stock options. So as we were sitting there talking, I noticed that one of the guys had a motivational products catalog sitting on his desk. And on the very front, it said quality. And then underneath, it had some inspirational quote that bore no relation to my life or the life of anybody that I knew. And I picked it up and I said, you know what we need around here? We need a poster that says mediocrity. It takes a lot less time and most people don't notice the difference. And one of the guys said, yeah, until it's too late. So as we talked, one of the guys said, you know, we should start a company that sells parodies of these products. And so then that night, that conversation became this: mediocrity. It takes a lot less time and most people don't notice the difference until it's too late. That company was eventually sold, and I think we each earned about $25,000 for our stock options. We certainly didn't get rich, but we took most of that money and started Despair Incorporated. Now understand that we were in a very toxic, very discouraging situation, and these products spoke to us, but we didn't know if they'd speak to anybody else. But within a very short time after we started the company, somebody downloaded all of the designs on our website and stuck it in an email and started sending it around. It went viral before anybody knew what it meant to go viral. And so it became very clear that these things that resonated with us in our toxic situation, you got to understand, this was the middle of the internet tech boom. I mean, there were stories every week about people deciding not to go to college, start their own business, and becoming millionaires, okay? That wasn't our experience. But we didn't know if other people would resonate with this, but they did. And so the question is, why? Why do these kinds of images, these demotivators, resonate with people so deeply? And I think one way to look at this is in the context of narrative identity. Very simply, the idea of narrative identity is that we are not simply a collection of qualities and properties, but we understand ourselves in the context of an unfolding story. So as we look at our life, we look back and we select items out of our history and we use that to tell a story about who we are now and project who we're going to become in the future. But the thing is, our narratives are constantly being retold and rewritten and renegotiated. So when things are going really well in our life, when we're succeeding, we have a tendency to look back and say, yeah, you know, I can see a pattern of success. I can see, you know, I maybe experienced some tough times, but I'm an overcomer. I'm a winner. That's why I'm winning right now. That's why I'm succeeding. And we look to the future and we say, I'm probably going to succeed in the future. On the other hand, when things are going really bad for us, when we failed at something, maybe we've bombed an exam, we have a tendency to look back and say, you know, I've always kind of been a slacker. I tend not to do so well. I've always, I didn't make the Little League. That's why I'm the way I am. I've always been kind of a loser, and I don't have a lot of hope for the future. So our identities are being renegotiated. But by the time we become an adult, we are typically acquainted with some very typical, culturally accepted narratives. For example, the Achilles heel narrative. This is a very common one. And these are people who are naturally gifted, but they've got something that causes them to handicap themselves. The classic example is the athlete or the musician. They're gifted, but they got some sort of an addiction, drugs or alcohol, and so they don't become what they could be because they self-handicap. On the flip side, there's the overcomer narrative. And we've all heard of people who have some kind of significant obstacle. It could be economic, it could be relational, it could be physiological, but they find a way to overcome. For example, we hear about a blind person who climbs Mount Everest. Most of us couldn't do it even if we're not blind, but we're like, wow, that is really something. Or you hear about the entrepreneur who's flat broke, who's maxed out their credit card, mortgaged their house. They look like they're going to lose everything, but then something happens and they're economically successful and they win. But most of us, particularly when we are young, we have what is generally referred to as a progressive narrative. And very simply, that's the idea that it's going to get better. And let me give you an example of a typical progressive narrative. Now, this may not be your narrative, and it's a little bit of an archetype, and as such, it's perhaps a caricature, but I think you're going to get the basic idea. You're going to graduate, and you're going to get your first job. It's going to be a good job. You're going to have some stability, both economically. You're not going to be moving around. You're going to be settled for a while. Then you're going to get married, and you're going to start a family. Eventually, they're going to recognize your skills and qualities at work, and you're going to get promoted, and your life will get more comfortable. Eventually, you're going to achieve a level of success that you're going to be a recognized leader in your field. People will know you. They'll seek you out at conferences. You will just be a recognized expert. After you achieve a certain level of comfort, you're going to decide, you're going to do something for yourself. You're going to do something creative. You might write a book. You might decide to finally invent that thing you've been thinking about. You might build a log cabin. It's going to be something that is specifically suited to you. About this time, your children are going to make you proud. This will obviously be a reflection on you, and it will validate all the advice that you've given to other people in your life. And then finally, at some point, the people you know, the people who admire you, they are going to try and draft you into public service. They're going to want you to be, the mayor, town council, state assembly, senator, something like that. And the reason why is because they're going to see in you leadership qualities that they want to follow. That's a progressive narrative. Granted, it's a bit of a caricature, and it may not be yours. But most of us don't lead that kind of a progressive narrative. Instead, we have a narrative of achievement that may differ dramatically from the progressive narrative, okay? And if the gulf between the narrative of achievement and the progressive narrative is too great, you experience the chasm of despair, okay? And this is where you feel a sense of discouragement, despondency, depression, dissonance, alienation from the true self you should be living. And let me give you an example of how this works. You're going to graduate and you're going to take your first job. It's not going to be your dream job, but you realize that not everybody gets to do exactly what they want when they grow up. But it doesn't matter. You know what? You're going to work hard, okay? And you're going to try and distinguish yourself from other people in that workplace. But it's not going to take very long before you're going to realize that even though you think you're a star, that doesn't really mean you're going anywhere. Okay? Now, some of you are going to get your dream job, and you're going to work very, very hard, and you're going to be excited. But at some point, you're going to realize that when that recruiter said they wanted people who were passionately engaged, that meant they were looking for willing sacrifices. And though you think you're going to advance based on your merit, you're going to learn that if you want to get to the top, you're going to have to kiss a lot of the bottom. Because sometimes the secret to success is learning who to blame for your failures. Now, many of you have been taught that the mark of a true leader is the ability to make decisions. But you're going to learn that sometimes the mark of a survivor is knowing when not to. Because sometimes the less you stand out, the longer you'll last. Now, your job may not be everything that you hope it will be, so you're going to focus on your personal life. You're going to meet the love of your life, your soulmate. You're going to get married and have kids. And no matter how much in love you are, there's a good chance that one of these days you're going to look at that person and you're going to say, you were meant for me, perhaps as a punishment. And though you are going to love your children beyond belief, you will eventually learn that the secret to a happy family is learning to expect less from those to whom you've given the most. And as you go through life, you're going to try and make a living, and you're going to raise your family, and you're going to try and give where you can. It's going to seem like somebody has always got their hand out. They always want more. And you're going to feel like the entire economy is set up to take from each according to his ability and give to each according to his lack thereof. And at some point, you're going to say, I got to get some perspective. Less is more. And you're going to feel good about it until you're standing next to the person with more. Then you're just going to feel pathetic. At this point, you're going to be tempted to believe that dreams are like rainbows and only idiots chase them. And if this goes on for too long, you're going to look back at your life and you're going to think about all the times you didn't do something out of fear. And you're going to think about all the times you took the path of least resistance or you took the easy way out. And you're going to say, what's the purpose of it all? And you're going to wonder if the purpose of your life is just to serve as a warning to others. Now, look, this is pretty depressing, okay? And let's hope for better things. But I think the question is, why has this been so popular? Why has it been so enduring? Despair has been around long enough. We've endured and we've survived 2 recessions. That's no mean feat for an e-commerce company. Why? Well, I think there are a couple reasons. One, humor is therapeutic. There is good evidence that shows when you're in the midst of very tough times, gallows humor increases your sense of resiliency. So 1, humor is therapeutic. 2, when we're going through tough times, we'd like to know that we're not alone. I got an email from Dr. Carl, what is his name again? Dr. Carl Petruso. He's the Dean of the Honors College at the University of Texas in Arlington. He said, I wish I could remove Despair Incorporated from my Safari top sites, but whenever I have a tough day, I find that the rush of schadenfreude I get from surfing to it to be better than a $6 double espresso latte with 3 teaspoons of refined white sugar. Now that's a very sophisticated way of saying misery loves company, okay? And then finally, in the context of narrative, I think sometimes these messages simply have a greater sense of narrative coherence and fidelity. They seem to tell a more authentic story than the motivational message that you've got to believe to achieve and that your attitude determines your altitude. So, if you're going through tough times, what do? 1, you've got to remember that the story of your life is still being written and it's not finished until it's over. No matter how hard it is, every day you get up, you have the opportunity to write another sentence, another paragraph, another chapter. 2, you've got to recognize that you're the author of your life and others are merely characters. It's too easy for us to cede control of our lives to other people. But the truth of the matter is at one point, even if you feel like it's your parents or your teachers or your boss or the people you're in a relationship with, your friends, you feel like they're writing your life, there's going to come a time in your life you're going to look back and you're going to realize you were the author of every single thing that you did. Others were merely characters. 3rd, you got to recognize that some of the best stories include hardship and injustice. We think we'd like to have the easy path where our life just goes up and to the right. But the truth of the matter is the most satisfying things in your life are going to be looking back and seeing when you overcame. Fourth, you've got to develop a learning mindset. A lot of times we look at difficulty and think it's a judgment on us that we have somehow failed. But the truth of the matter is they're just obstacles to be learned, and we have to grow through them. We got to learn about ourselves, how we respond to difficulties, and we've got to learn how to overcome the obstacles themselves. And then finally, if you're really, really, really going through a difficult time, you've got to realize that the real secret to success is to, there we go. Pretend that you've already achieved it and then offer to sell that secret to other people. Okay. Thank you.